Hey guys, tonight we will journey back to an era when queens avoided water like the plague. Perfume concealed putrid odors, and a royal smile could quite literally kill the atmosphere at any moment. Elizabeth I was not merely a sovereign, she was a living spectacle. Behind the pearls and powdered skin lay a woman petrified of water, obsessed with her image, and resolute in remaining untouchable. Personal hygiene. It was not about health, it was theatre. Her maintenance methods will leave you aghast, from brushing her teeth with sugar to turning pitch black. Decaying teeth into high-fashion statements you certainly would not have lasted a single day in her court. Before we begin, please hit like and subscribe if you truly enjoy what I share. Comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Now, dim the lights. Switch on a fan for that gentle background breeze. And join me as we settle into tonight's story. Few personalities in English law, and indeed world history, are as enduringly memorable as Queen Elizabeth I. She wasn't merely a shrewd sovereign or a formidable strategist who maintained power for 44 years in a man's realm. She was at the centre of some of the oddest tales ever told about personal cleanliness. It may sound peculiar, but once you hear that she scrubbed her teeth with sugar, went months without a proper bath, and made decaying teeth a courtroom fashion statement, you'll see why we're dedicating this sleepy evening to her outlandish clean living rituals. Let's be clear, this isn't about some eccentric relative's dubious spa habits. This is Elizabeth I, child of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, the latter executed for alleged treason, who ascended amid turmoil, forged England into a global force, vanquished the Spanish Armada, championed Protestantism, and ruled with razor-sharp intellect and an immaculate public image. But that flawless visage owed nothing to soap or hot water. It was crafted through thick layers of lead-infused makeup, vermilion lip paint heavy with mercury, and hand-spritzed rose water. Elizabeth wasn't simply clean, she embodied cleanliness. Surviving in a patriarchal court meant becoming a living legend, and that legend had to exude the scent of blooms. She took pride in calling herself the Virgin Queen, a moniker as burdensome as it was hallowed. It left no margin for error, no hint of body odour, no signs of aging, no slip in the illusion. A single bead of sweat could shatter the facade, so she elevated hygiene to high art, not through bathing, but by believing that water itself was perilous, that perfume could veil decay, and that smelling divine would stifle any scrutiny. Why delve into her 5 most bizarre grooming rituals? Because they're not merely bizarre or amusing, they illuminate an entire epoch. 16th century hygiene wasn't about eradicating germs, but about masking stench. Hand washing was elective, scented gloves were de rigueur, and Elizabeth, haunted by the dread of losing command, pushed these customs to extremes, transmuting stench into majesty, rot into style, and her own flesh into something inviolable by time. Picture her dawn ritual. Not a splash of water, but gentle dabs of vinegar and herb-soaked cloth by her maids. Envision a ruler who forbade mirrors, lest she glimpse the ulcerated skin beneath her painted mask. Imagine crimson wigs concealing mercury-thinned hair, a crown of artificial locks crowning a decaying body turned royal emblem. It may sound preposterous, yet at its heart lies a universal fear exposure. For Elizabeth, a wrinkle, a missing tooth, even a fleeting feint could be brandished by adversaries. Thus she chose the permanence of image porcelain pale, perfumed, and never wetted. Tonight, we'll uncover 5 of Queen Elizabeth I's most nightmarish cleansing customs, not to ridicule, but to grasp the price of legend. When cleansing becomes ritual and cosmetics become armor, you realize that preserving an illusion can be more demanding than ruling a realm. Ready to enter the Queen's secret world. No running water, no modern conveniences, only revelations that will lull you and perhaps unsettle you. We begin with the astonishing fact that she polished her teeth with sugar. Gross routine number 1. Polishing teeth with pure sugar. If there was one indulgence that delighted Queen Elizabeth I, more than routing the Spanish Armada. It was sugar. That sparkling sweet wasn't merely a dessert. It was the ultimate status symbol in her court, precious, exotic, and a declaration of power. The queen didn't just sample sugar. She bathed in its glory as though it were the lifeblood of her burgeoning empire. Candied violets, syrup-soaked fruits, almond marzipan. Every banquet became a sugar extravaganza. To Elizabeth, sugar signified triumph, prosperity, and a recipe for dental disaster. In an era before commercial toothpaste and nylon bristles, toothbrushes amounted to frayed cloth or sharpened twigs. Undeterred, Elizabeth's personal apothecary devised a bizarre paste, crushed herbs, powdered roots, and astonishingly granulated sugar. In effect, she was coating her teeth with the very culprit, rotting them away. It's akin to smothering a fire in gasoline and praying it'll die down. But the queen went further. She scrubbed her smile with harsh abrasives made from pulverized seashells, ground eggshells, and gritty minerals, materials that eroded enamel like coarse sandpaper. The outcome: her once regal grin degenerated into a grim dental horror, ebony-stained teeth, shattered fragments, and gaping gaps. Court observers reported that her breath was so noxious that courtiers had to lean back just to listen. At times, her speech was nearly indecipherable, through a mouth ravaged from within. Yet Elizabeth staunchly refused extractions, paralyzed by the fear of pain. Legend tells of a devoted courtier who offered to have his own tooth yanked in her presence to prove the procedure wasn't fatal still. The queen would not relent. The mere thought of discomfort threatened her carefully maintained composure. The most astonishing twist, rather than ridicule her, the noblewomen imitated her decay. They stained their own teeth with soot and charcoal to echo their sovereign's look. In that courtly culture, blackened teeth became a badge of allegiance, refinement, and high rank. If Elizabeth's rotting smile symbolized majesté, then matching it was the ultimate tribute. Ask any lady why she'd charcoal streak her grin, and she'd whisper, "To honor the legend I serve." Disgusting habit number 2, never truly bathed. Only touched up with fragrant sprays. Legend has it that Queen Elizabeth I once quipped, "I bathe once a month, whether I need it or not." True or not, the remark reflects her era's dread of water. 16th century folk feared that deadly miasmas, poisonous airs, could lurk in baths and seep into the body. Elizabeth, ever vigilant about preserving her control, fully embraced this superstition. As a result, she virtually never immersed herself in a tub. Instead, she relied on a continual rotation of fresh undershifts, soft linen shirts believed to draw out sweat, Dreamy, and pollutants from the skin. A clean garment, they assumed, meant a clean body. Practical. If you'd never encountered a person who hadn't showered in weeks, when she needed to feel refreshed, Elizabeth turned to her private cache of scented waters, rosewater, diluted vinegar, and bespoke herbal distillations prepared by royal apothecaries. Handmaids would delicately pat these concoctions onto her face and décolletage. Never a vigorous rub, never a full wash. Gone was soap, steam, and soaking. Instead came a slow, reverent ritual, befitting a holy relic. For Elizabeth, her flesh was more than mere skin. It embodied divine sovereignty and must remain unblemished by time, illness, or even liquid. Calling for a proper bath was a grand production, hauling in a huge wooden tub, heating countless pails of water, and enlisting several servants to manage the ordeal. Privacy was scarce, comfort non-existent, and to her, not worth the trouble. Why endure that clamoring when a few graceful dabs of perfumed cloth achieved the same effect? Add to that her elaborate makeup, lead-white foundation, and mercury-tinted lips, and you see why water posed a threat. A single drop could dissolve the mask. exposing vulnerable flesh beneath. So she fortified the illusion gowns imbued with fragrance, gloves steeped in floral oils, handkerchiefs drenched in perfume, and layered fabrics that trapped scent and concealed any signs of decay. As she glided through court, Elizabeth became a living bouquet roses. Leona and Rosemary, trailing in her wake, powerful enough to make attendants light-headed. Yet no one dared fault her for neglecting the tub. In her world, aroma equaled purity. If she exuded divine fragrance, she must be immaculate. She redefined cleanliness as an aura, an olfactory spectacle so meticulously orchestrated that it superseded actual washing. Elizabeth I never questioned her choice. Scent over scrubbing was a calculated act of power. And the court complied, holding their noses if they had to, because in truth, perfume had become the new soap, and dabbing had replaced bathing for the most formidable monarch England ever knew. Disgusting habit number 3. Forsaking face and hair. Cleansing queen. Elizabeth. I exhibited a peculiarity almost unthinkable today. She very rarely washed her own face. It wasn't due to lack of resources or sheer sloth, but rather a fear that water would erase her meticulously applied makeup. And for her, that was an intolerable risk. Her complexion had already paid the price for daily layers of Venetian ceruse, a deadly blend of lead and vinegar. This toxic concoction left her skin raw, blistered, and deeply scarred. Yet instead of abandoning the paste or attempting a proper cleansing, Elizabeth doubled down each dawn, brought a fresh veneer of the white mixture atop the previous coating. By night, she would simply blend the layers with scented oils and sleep with the mask intact, entombed in her own handcrafted perfection. Over time, these accumulations formed a brittle, blaster-like facade. Courtiers whispered that a single misstep could crack the shell, sending chalky flakes drifting across her velvet gowns, an unforgivable breach in her cultivated illusion. Hair care fared no better. Elizabeth eschewed water entirely, instead using a stiffening solution of egg white and sugar water to sculpt her locks. She then dusted them with white powder, turning her natural hair into a rigid crown of control. But the poisons lead in her makeup and mercury in her lip color eventually thinned and damaged her real hair. Unfazed, the queen transitioned to elaborate wigs, voluminous, crimson, and curled, each styled to maintain her timeless persona. Beneath these false tresses lay the truth thinning, brittle strands no one dared mention. Rumor has it, she banned mirrors from her private chambers, unwilling to confront the ravaged flesh under that flawless mask. To guard against any telltale cracks, she employed a personal attendant whose sole duty was to reapply powder to her neck and shoulders. This way, no matter how she moved, the seamless illusion remained unbroken. Elizabeth did not bathe her face or hair out of vanity. It was a deliberate strategy. She sacrificed genuine cleanliness to preserve a legend of unattainable perfection, ensuring that neither she nor her subjects would ever glimpse the vulnerable woman beneath the mask. Disgusting habit number 4. Slathering on lethal cosmetics. Among the enduring images of Queen Elizabeth I is her legendary pallor, flawless, ghostly white, and unnaturally smooth, as if carved from marble. Yet that ethereal complexion was anything but natural. It was formed from layers of toxic makeup. At the heart of her beauty regimen lay Venetian ceruse, a cosmetic prized for its stark whiteness, composed of lead acetate and vinegar. It offered the perfect alabaster finish, but at a terrible cost. In an age when sun-kissed skin marked outdoor toil, porcelain cheeks signified noble birth and luxury. Elizabeth embraced this notion wholeheartedly, coating her face day after day in a heavy paste that concealed scars, wrinkles, and freckles. As the lead poison ravaged her face, causing weeping sores, peeling skin, and painful ulcers, she refused to abandon her ritual. Instead, she piled on fresh layers each morning, creating a rigid mask that hid any sign of decay beneath a facade of unchanging perfection. Her beauty arsenal didn't end there. For her lips, Elizabeth applied a deep crimson paint infused with mercury, one of the deadliest substances of the era. This vivid colour lent her an air of authority and allure, even as the neurotoxin wrought havoc on her health. Chronic memory lapses, mood swings, trembling limbs, and general fatigue became part of her daily reality. Yet, she persisted. Portraiture under her rule was strictly controlled. Painters were only allowed to follow an official template, a standardized, idealized version of her youthful visage. Even when she was well into her 60s, her royal likeness remained ageless and impeccable on canvas. This was no mere vanity, it was a form of political theatre. A visual manifesto asserting that the monarch was immutable and divine. On state occasions, Elizabeth elevated the effect with towering wigs, jewelled hairpieces, and voluminous ruffs, ensuring her painted face never met the elements. Foreign envoys noted the overpowering scent of chemicals before catching sight of her. Some even admitted they dared not stare directly at her mask in case it should crack. Yet that brittle shell was precisely her strength. By rejecting authenticity in favour of an unassailable image, she fortified her authority. No one questioned her decreed visage. Removing the mask was tantamount to treason against the Tudor myth. Today, we recognise how deadly lead and mercury truly are. But for Elizabeth, the crown she defended was worth every poisoned layer. Every application of those toxic pigments was not just about beauty, it was an ironclad defence of her reign. Disgusting habit number 5, turning decay into high court fashion. In a palace where the Queen's every quirk was instantly revered, even the most revolting affliction could morph into a trend. When Elizabeth I's teeth began to crumble, courtiers did not shudder, they emulated her. Rather than scorn her blackened smile, the ladies of her court smeared soot, charcoal, or ash across their own teeth, to mimic the monarch's shadowy grin. In their eyes, if the Queen's rot was chic, then rot was beauty. It became a badge of nobility, wealth, and unwavering loyalty to her reign. This grotesque vogue sprang from Elizabeth's sugar obsession, the very indulgence that ruined her dentition. Sugar, a rare and costly treat, was synonymous with affluence. Thus, a decaying smile signalled daily feasting on candied violets, syrup-drenched fruits, marzipan confections, and honeyed pastries. To sport blackened teeth was to declare yourself a connoisseur of royal extravagance. Without modern dental remedies or toothpaste, her teeth darkened from pale ivory to sickly yellow. Then, to deep obsidian, they fractured, chipped, and ultimately fell away. So potent was the stench that courtiers are said to have leaned back to endure a conversation. Some chroniclers even noted that her speech slurred through a mouth ravaged by decay. Yet Elizabeth would not suffer extractions. Her dread of pain outweighed any concern for etiquette. A devoted courtier once volunteered to have a tooth yanked before her to demonstrate its safety. But she refused. Every fractured, soot-stained tooth remained in place, treated as a relic. What began as personal ruin became political theatre. In the glittering Elizabethan court, decayed teeth became couture. Pristine white teeth marked poverty. Crumbling black ones proclaimed you feasted like a queen. Elizabeth never hid her decayed smile instead. She let it define an age. Her blackened grin joined the powdered wigs, jewelled gowns, and alabaster visage as an indelible symbol of power. In her world, rot was not shame. It was allegiance. To mock her teeth would be to mock the monarchy itself, and no one dared. Thus, a once disgusting dental disaster became the ultimate emblem of regal authority, the eternal portrait, a masterpiece of light and illusion. Most women, upon reaching 60, would acknowledge the marks of time on their features, not Elizabeth the Prima. For her, growing older was simply a tale she refused to accept. She transformed her visage into a stage prop for her reign, ensuring the legend of her youth endured. No artist could dare paint her true likeness. Lines around the eyes, not permitted. Faint shadows or sagging cheeks, erased without question. Painters were handed a single, sanctioned template, a portrait of the Queen in her prime. Whether she was 30 or 60, the image remained unchanged, luminous, flawless, and regal beyond mortal bounds. "I am more than a woman, I am England," she famously proclaimed. From that point on, Elizabeth abandoned her individuality in favour of becoming an icon. Within the walls of her palaces, she lived in twilight. Sunlight was banished. Only the gentle glow of candles was allowed to illuminate her. Candlelight softened every crease in her thick white makeup and disguised any hint of aging. Courtiers whispered that her painted mask was so brittle it might shatter at the slightest touch, yet she bore it proudly, adding fresh layers each day like ceremonial armour. By the end of her life, Elizabeth had ceased to be a mere mortal. She existed as her own portrait. She shunned mirrors and natural light, and even direct eye contact was rare. A handful of trusted handmaidens tended her daily dusting powder onto her neck and shoulders to seal every seam in her facade. Their mission wasn't hygiene, it was preservation. Her public image had to remain untouched by time. She did not grow old. She did not change. She simply paused in eternal youth. When people admired her beauty, they referred not to the woman, but to the myth captured in endless portraits lining royal halls. There she stood, amid symbols of victory, her face aglow like dawn, her robes cascading like celestial fabric. These canvases were more than art. They were proclamations of a truth. She herself authored "The Monarch Never Fades." And though everyone understood those images were crafted illusions, they believed them anyway. For repeated often enough, a portrayal transcends reality. And Elizabeth mastered the art of making her own legend timeless. As her health declined, Elizabeth didn't turn to doctors. She doubled down on her crafted persona. No courtiers ever glimpsed her perspire, seen her falter, or laid eyes on unadorned flesh. She didn't conceal frailty by medicine. She erased it with her legend. In her final years, she gave up courtly dances and public speeches. She retreated into chambers, swathed in velvet, where only the dim flicker of nearly spent candles and the last wafts of rosewater lingered. Days slipped by in hushed stillness, her voice unheard, her features unseen. Yet outside those sealed rooms, her officially sanctioned portrait still watched over the palace. The noble women continued to stain their smiles jet black in tribute. Bards still praised her as the ageless Virgin Queen. Visitors wandered galleries lined with images of a sovereign who, in reality, had long since slipped behind her own mask. Elizabeth didn't conquer mortality with potions or prayers. She outwitted it with artifice. And when she finally breathed her last, no one could say for certain what lay beneath her layers of paint and powder. She had systematically removed the real woman from public memory, replacing her with an unchanging emblem of authority. In death, as in life, she did not pass away as a mere mortal. She transcended into myth, disgusting habit. Number 6. Masking decay with scent and ceremony. If you believe hygiene simply means soap and water, you've never stepped into Queen Elizabeth I's court. She postponed true bathing, hair washing, and face cleansing, but she never allowed herself to smell foul. Her secret, a fortress of fragrance built through complex rituals and potent perfumes. Elizabeth didn't dab on scent as a mere luxury. She wielded it like armor. In a Tudor court where even the faintest whiff of sweat could spark scandal, she was perpetually ensconced in a mist of lavender, rosewater, and custom-blended herbal vinegars, brewed in the palace's apothecary. These elixirs didn't so much cleanse as they did overwhelm natural odors. Picture her on a tense afternoon, surrounded by anxious courtiers, not as a perspiring mortal, but as a living bouquet, a spritz of delicate rosewater at her temples, a light pat of scented oil on her wrists, a perfumed kerchief tucked at her belt enough to keep anyone at arm's length. For moments when an unwelcome stench invaded her space, she relied on pomanders small, perforated balls filled with exotic resins and dried herbs, secreted in her skirts or hanging from a chain at her waist. She'd lift one to her nose, inhaling deeply to declare, "I do not belong to the baser world." Her wardrobe wasn't merely sumptuous. It was impregnated with layers of aroma. Perfume became her emblem of authority rather than a marker of cleanliness. Attendants followed strict daily routines, crafting bespoke fragrances, so her signature scent never faltered. Visitors recounted entering her chambers as if stepping into an eastern rose garden. Awash in blooms and mystery, Elizabeth turned scent into a psychological weapon. She wasn't just a queen walking the halls. She was a mesmerizing force of power, draped in an invisible cloak of perfume that concealed both decay and doubt. Those who served her well understood that scent functioned as a silent shield, protecting Elizabeth from the ravages of time, from unguarded scrutiny, and from the harsh truths beneath layers of paint and silk. Every note of her chosen perfume was part of a deliberate campaign, a vital tactic in the art of self-preservation amid constant plots and jealous rivals. Though shunning water might seem grotesque to us, for Elizabeth, it was a declaration of dominance. Selecting fragrance over cleansing meant embracing illusion as her greatest weapon. And with a single waft of her signature aroma, she could captivate an entire realm, the inviolable form, cleanliness as spectacle. Elizabeth I regarded her body not as mere flesh, but as a hallowed emblem of the realm, to be safeguarded at all costs. Every sumptuous gown, every spritz of perfume, every ornate wig was engineered to conceal reality. Ensuring her sovereign image remained untouchable, she refused to expose a single inch of skin, convinced that any glimpse of a human body marked by perspiration, scent, age, or ailment would betray her power and invite assault by foes. In her view, a living, breathing form was unfit to bear a crown. Thus she erected an impenetrable facade, a flawless shell that time and rumor could never pierce. From girlhood, she understood the perils of gossip. One whispered slur could obliterate a woman's standing. Determined to control her narrative, she meticulously dictated every aspect of her presence from the distance. Courtiers stood, to the fragrances that trailed behind her, to the myth they constructed in their minds. For Elizabeth, clean transcended simple hygiene. It meant vanishing into artifice, erasing sweat, masking odors, and hiding any sign of weakness. Drenched in lead-white makeup, crowned by flame-red wigs, and veiled in layers of exotic scents, her body became a mobile throne, an imperious monument demanding devotion rather than empathy. Each step across those velvet carpets was less a walk and more a sovereign's decree, broadcast in fabric and fragrance. In the Tudor court, purification was not a private act but a public performance, a strategic weapon wielded beyond reach. People beheld the sovereign queen but never the woman beneath. She remade herself into an undying icon, immune to the ravages of age or scandal. Her flesh was never seen, her power never questioned. In that enduring illusion lit by candlelight, scented by roses, and immortalized in portraiture, Elizabeth I achieved a legacy no mortal could ever defile, a glittering fortress concealing hidden horrors from afar. Elizabeth I's royal residences appeared nothing short of celestial. Massive stone ramparts rose against the sky, their facades carved with intricate detail. Beneath vaulted ceilings adorned in gold leaf, candlelight danced across opulent velvet runners. Musicians' strains of lute and viol filled the air, each note reinforcing the aura of regal magnificence. Every corner whispered of untouchable sovereignty. But cross the threshold, and a grim reality awaited. These opulent manors lacked what we now deem essential comforts. No flushing privies, no sewage conduits, and not a single tap or basin for running water. Instead, chamber pots, wooden pails, and ceramic bowls lay discreetly in rooms and passageways, awaiting manual emptying. Each vessel's contents, urine and feces, were dumped unceremoniously into cesspits. Crude shafts dug deep into the earth with no attempt at treatment. The resulting atmosphere was a foul brew human waste mingled with spoiled victuals, animal offal, and stagnant moisture. Servants scattered lavender sprigs, rosemary bundles, and wormwood across floors, striving to curtain the stench. But the odour proved relentless. It clung to tapestries, seeped into flagstones, and clung to every tapestry and timber. To escape the suffocating miasma, Elizabeth frequently relocated her court, not solely for diplomatic strategy, but also to flee the pervasive rot. Though gilded halls and grand portraits proclaimed unrivaled power, the very stones beneath her feet bore the filth and damp of unchecked decay. Thus her reign unfolded in paradox, a world where splendour and squalor existed side by side, and the mightiest woman in England ruled over both golden majesty and hidden putrescence, the Queen's privy seat, where authority met excrement. Even as England's supreme ruler, Elizabeth I could not escape nature's call, but her privy was anything but commonplace. Crafted from fine wood and padded for ease, it concealed a ceramic chamber pot beneath the cushion. Known as the close stool, this chair was a hallmark of royal privilege. Emptying and caring for the close stool fell not to lowly servants, but to a trusted noble, the groom of the stool. Far beyond mere latrine duty, this role ranked among the most intimate and powerful at court, chosen for unwavering loyalty and discretion. The groom attended to the Queen in her most private moments, helped her robe and disrobe, and often stood in on weighty political councils. In Tudor England, proximity to the monarch's body, even during ablutions, meant proximity to true power. Beyond these secluded chambers, however, the palace's sanitation was rudimentary. No flush systems, no running water, only pots, basins, and buckets waiting to be emptied into cesspits dug deep beneath or just outside the walls. As night fell, specialized night soil men hauled away pails of waste through dim corridors, thankless labor that nevertheless kept the grand estate from drowning in filth. The stench of human excrement clung to every stone and timber, a hidden counterpart to the dazzling gold leaf and silk tapestries on display. Visitors could marvel at the glittering pageantry, unaware that decay and disarray thrived just beyond the velvet drapes. In this curious fusion of grandeur and grit, the groom of the stool held a position of unparalleled trust, both servant and confidant, curator of the Queen's most secret needs. In Tudor ideology, true authority extended even to the disposal of royal waste. That unassuming ceramic pot beneath Elizabeth's seat embodied the intersection of sovereignty and the most basic human reality, reminding us that power in her era governed not only the realm, but every private breath and every drop of refuse. The inescapable miasma, shadows beneath the splendor, under the warm flicker of countless candles, with plush carpets underfoot and delicate silk draperies framing vast chambers. Few would suspect the oppressive, foul odour lurking within, yet that was Elizabeth I's everyday reality. The atmosphere in her palace was thick with the reek of human waste, sweat, rotting victuals, stagnant water, and unwashed bodies. No matter how many bundles of rosemary, lavender, or wormwood the servants burned in the hearths, or how many dried petals and oil-soaked rushes they scattered across the floors, the stench remained relentless. Worse still, those floor coverings were seldom exchanged. Over days and weeks, they collected scraps of food, fallen hair, and even the occasional rodent corpse, turning into breeding grounds for foul-smelling bacteria. To escape this unbearable miasma, Elizabeth often relocated her court, not merely for politics but to evade suffocation. The longer a residence went unemptied, the more waste piled up, intensifying the odor beyond what even the rarest Eastern perfumes could conceal. Here lay the paradox of her reign, a gleaming realm outwardly, yet rotten at its foundation. The queen ruled over splendor that masked decay, demanding her visage remain pristine while the air around her grew nearly unbreathable. This stark contrast laid bare a harsh lesson: supreme authority does not guarantee purity. Sometimes, sustaining power means living amidst filth, covering truth with paint, perfume, and ritual. Even the grandest tapestries and richest jewels could not dispel the darkness seeping through stone and wood corners where candlelight dared not reach. Elizabeth became the living emblem of a kingdom that dazzled the world, yet stank at its heart. In her struggle to command both respect and illusion, she battled foes both outside the palace walls and the relentless stench within them. From filth to authority, cleanliness as courtly theatre, Elizabeth I inhabited a realm utterly unlike our modern one. She seldom bathed, never cleansed her hair or face, and had no notion of hygiene as we know it today. Yet she was never branded unclean or disreputable. Instead, she was venerated as the very embodiment of sanctity, virtue, and impervious majesty. How could this paradox exist? The secret lay in the Tudor court's ruthless politics. Perception eclipsed truth. In an environment where a single whisper could topple dynasties, image management was vital. Every avoided bath, every layer of chalky white paint, every floor-length gown proclaiming modesty became a calculated assertion of dominion. For Elizabeth, clean wasn't about water and soap, but about wielding power. To step into the world utterly bare without cosmetics or regalia was to reveal weakness. A human body betrays age, disease, perspiration, and odor liabilities. A monarch could never risk, so Elizabeth shrouded herself in eternal youthfulness, projecting purity not through actual laundering, but through unyielding control of her appearance. Her version of cleanliness lived in the eyes of her subjects. A sovereign who exuded sweetness, showed no trace of sweat, and remained untouched by time, became the safest symbol for a kingdom always teetering on discord. She demonstrated that in high-stakes politics, clean is a veneer, not a state of being. From lead-white makeup and towering wigs to lavish perfumes and secret rituals concealing frailty, every detail wove a tapestry of power. Courtiers and commoners alike gazed upon an ageless monarch, no wrinkles, no infirmity, no hint of life's harsher truths. They never perceived the decay under her paint, the odors veiled by costly oils, or the hidden chamber pots behind velvet screens. Yet within that crafted illusion lay her strength. Elizabeth ruled not only with armies and laws, but with artful deception, turning her very person into a timeless icon. And although she eschewed modern cleanliness, in the hearts and minds of her people, she remained the ultimate symbol of perfect purity and untouchable authority. The cost of immortality, when artifice destroys the self. In the twilight of her reign, Elizabeth I concealed her true visage from all but her closest attendants. She shunned sunlight, outlawed mirrors in her private quarters, and fortified her face with ever thicker layers of leaded paint. So dire was her fear of exposure that she maintained a personal servant whose sole duty was to dust her shoulders with powder in private, guaranteeing that no one would catch a glimpse of her raw, inflamed skin ravaged by mercury. She even carried a perfumed cane. At the faintest whiff of unpleasantness, she'd raise it to her nostrils, a quiet but unmistakable declaration. I exist on a higher plane. Elizabeth had transcended humanity, becoming a living emblem honed from floral essences, toxic cosmetics, and an unyielding refusal to acknowledge her mortality. Ironically, this very denial cemented her legend. She understood that revealing her true features, sallow complexion, thinning locks, open sores hidden beneath sumptuous robes, would shatter the carefully crafted myth. and so she sacrificed her own flesh to preserve her facade. But the illusion proved ravenous. It did more than mask her. It consumed her identity. Elizabeth's true adversary was not just foreign powers or courtly rivals, but the insidious decay from within. A tug of war between the flesh and blood woman and the immortal icon she projected. When at last she drew her final breath, there was no trace of the vulnerable queen beneath the heavy paint. Only a legend remained, an everlasting portrait sealed in white powder. A testament to power that not even death could diminish, not the flesh, but the facade, by modern standards. Elizabeth I was hardly what we'd call clean. She shunned full baths, rarely soaped her hair, and almost never let water touch her face. To our eyes, her grooming habits were extreme, bordering on the grotesque. Yet in her era, she was hailed as the very picture of sanctity and sovereign grace. That reputation wasn't born of ordinary hygiene, but was the fruit of years spent crafting an impregnable illusion. Every scented lotion she wore, every coat of lead-white paint she applied, and every deliberate avoidance of bathing or daylight was a calculated assertion of authority. Elizabeth wasn't concerned with true cleanliness. She only cared that no one could question her strength or glimpse any trace of vulnerability. In a court where a stray whisper could topple a dynasty, she opted for artifice over authenticity, allowing her constructed persona to reign supreme. Her real skin, her natural scent, her decaying teeth, and matted hair were all sacrificed to maintain a flawless image. And though that image relied on toxic powders and isolation, it endured, etched into the collective memory of England as the eternal, untouchable queen. She imparted a timeless truth: for a woman to wield power, she need not be clean in the conventional sense. She must be untouchable. To Elizabeth I, cleanliness was never a matter of soap and water, but of perception. A ruler might be cloaked in odor and ravaged by disease. Yet as long as her carefully nurtured image remained intact, she stood unassailable. She learned that it is not the reality of one's flesh that commands respect, but the unblemished facade projected to the world. In transforming herself into a living monument, Elizabeth erected a radiant veil over all signs of human frailty. Each layer of lead-white paint, every scented pomander she carried, and each invisible ritual that kept her skin and hair forever veiled was a deliberate stroke in a grand portrait of authority. Under that gleaming mask, age, illness, and decay were banished. What remained was a sovereign icon, immutable, invincible, and entirely legendary. Her reign illustrates a profound lesson in the politics of power. What truly matters is not what you are, but what others perceive you to be. With unerring calculation, Elizabeth wielded cosmetics, wigs, perfumes, and arcane hygiene ceremonies as instruments of statecraft. Every morning, as her makeup was reapplied and her hairpiece refitted, she was not merely preparing for the day, she was refortifying her dominion. This mastery of image came at a price. The toxic materials she embraced wrought havoc upon her health, isolating her ever further from ordinary human experience. She willingly sacrificed the comfort of genuine cleanliness and the warmth of unguarded intimacy in exchange for a pristine aura of authority. Yet it was this very sacrifice that anchored her throne in a turbulent world of intrigue, espionage, and endless conspiracies. When, at last, Elizabeth laid down her crown, she departed this life not as the vulnerable woman beneath the paint, frail skin, thinning hair, and hidden sores, but as the immortal figure she had become, a paradoxical blend of power and artifice. Her legacy endures as the ultimate demonstration that in the realm of power, survival depends not on unvarnished truth, but on the enduring potency of illusion. Thus, Elizabeth I's extraordinary life invites reflection on the nature of leadership itself. True authority transcends the body's limitations. It resides in the mind's capacity to shape perception. In an age when a single rumor could topple dynasties, She asserted dominion not merely through force of arms or the council of ministers, but through the unassailable brilliance of her self-fashioned image. 5 unconventional rituals revealing the woman and the mastermind behind Elizabeth I. Queen Elizabeth I stands among Europe's most enduring figures, her legacy shaped not only by conquests and politics, but by 5 astonishing personal rites. These weren't mere eccentricities, they were calculated moves by a shrewd, forward-thinking monarch who understood that image and power were inseparable. Elizabeth's notorious sugar toothbrushing, using the very substance rotting her enamel, speaks volumes about her paradoxical genius. She harnessed the destructive force of sugar to craft a dental statement that became court vogue, turning vulnerability into prestige. Similarly, her refusal to bathe, substituting water with scented linen and herbal lotions, shows how she placed her public image above conventional health. By rejecting the ordinary bath, she underscored her untouchable status, ensuring no whisper of sweat or dishevelment could undermine her authority. Her daily application of lead-based Venetian ceruse and mercury-tinted lip rouge was equally strategic. Though these poisons ravaged her skin and nerves, they created a porcelain visage so flawless that artists were ordered to reproduce only her idealized likeness. Each layer of makeup, each sweep of powder, became armor in the relentless game of Tudor politics. Refusing to wash away these layers, Elizabeth cloaked herself in myth, rejecting the natural signs of age and illness. And when dental decay finally set in, she embraced it rather than conceal it, allowing blackened teeth to become a symbol of royal indulgence. Noble women imitated the Queen, staining their own smiles to signal their loyalty and status. In this act, Elizabeth turned a personal affliction into a political tool. Taken together, these 5 rituals reveal a woman who traded physical comfort for unassailable power. She sacrificed personal well-being, skin corroded by lead, nerves frayed by mercury, decaying dentition, to craft a persona so perfect that it transcended reality. Her wardrobe wasn't merely sumptuous. It was impregnated with layers of aroma. Perfume became her emblem of authority rather than a marker of cleanliness. Attendants followed strict daily routines, crafting bespoke fragrances, so her signature scent never faltered. Visitors recounted entering her chambers as if stepping into an eastern rose garden, awash in blooms and mystery.